Welcome to Surviving Show Business, the podcast that takes you inside entertainment to help you survive and thrive with your host, Aaron Seals. Surviving Show Business is sponsored by nycastings.com, the place where stars are born. Actors, models, dancers, and singers can join and get casting notices sent to your phone every day. Hey folks, welcome to Surviving Show Business, and today's very special guest is Margaret Emory. Margaret has been a talent agent for over 25 years. She currently works at SW Artists here in New York, and she even wrote a book about the acting business called Ask an Agent. So that's what we're going to do today, is ask this agent. Welcome, Margaret.
Hi, thank you so much. Wonderful to be here.
Great to have you. So, okay, let's get started. How did you get into this business?
Well, sure. I actually was an actress. I went to the neighborhood playhouse after I graduated from Princeton. I'd always wanted to be an actress. And so I got some training at the neighborhood playhouse, which is a school here in New York City that Sanford Meisner started. And I did that training for 2 years, and then I went out and had, a nice but insignificant career. I did a lot of off-Broadway showcases, trying to get an agent. I also worked at the New Jersey Shakespeare Festival as an intern. You know, they call them EMCs these days, Equity Membership Candidates. It's a program that Equity has for young talent to gain experience working in a theater, and then they can gain points towards their equity card. So I did that program, and I actually amassed the amount of points to join the union, but I was also offered at the same time an equity contract, so I joined the union by being an actress in a contract. And then I had a 10-year career. I did some work on the soaps here in New York City.
Which soaps?
The Guiding Light.
Okay.
And Another World. Mm-hmm. And then I also did a lot of, I made my own work by being very entrepreneurial. I had a political satire group, and we did lots of shows in cabarets throughout the city, and also they had come up from Washington, D.C., so we did a lot of shows in, I guess the tri-state area, and we wrote our own material, and it was very funny, and that was interesting. And I also had a Shakespeare company that did, I guess you could call them assemblies and language workshops in schools and colleges up and down the Eastern Seaboard. That was very interesting too, and hard work. Going into junior high and doing a Shakespeare program. It's challenging, but we were really great. We really went to the students and tried to get them to have an experience with poetic language that was visceral, and it was a worthwhile program. And I did that for a couple of years. And then a mentor kind of suggested that I be an agent, and because I had been so good at organizing and running companies, and I thought, well, I don't want to be an agent. I never got one, so why would I want to be one?
Okay.
I didn't react very well to that suggestion. So she said, well, how about a casting director? And I had been cast by a casting director, so they weren't all bad. But I really wanted to continue being an actress. And so one thing led to another, and I actually did get a job as an assistant in an agency, and I agreed to go and try that out. And you can read more about all of that in my book. But to be honest, Aaron, once I got on the other side and saw how the business really works, and was privy to all the information that as an actress I had no idea about, it was so fascinating that I never looked back, really, because I could see that there was a lot of things I could do to use my capabilities and really be effective for other people in their dreams and search for moving ahead as actors. And I've been an agent for more than 25 years, and I really love it. And I think it's a great way for me to use all of my gifts. And it's a little, you have to be creative, you have to be a business person, be highly organized, and very passionate about the work. And it's really very difficult, competitive. I mean, you can see just as an actor how competitive it is, and then multiply that by 100 or however many actors you represent. It's extremely competitive, but very worthwhile.
Okay, so let's get into the nuts and bolts. Like, what is an agent? What do they do?
Sure. Well, an agent is really, it's like a glorified human resource person in this field of entertainment. We are the middleman. We are between the actor and the job. So what we do, we wear many hats. We make submissions to casting directors of the actors that we represent. So we're trying to get them auditions. And then when they get the auditions, we make sure they have all the information and the material to prepare. And sometimes we can guide them in their choices of how to approach the material. That's part of our job too. And then if they get offers, we negotiate the contracts and we advise in many different levels according to what jobs to choose, how to build the career, what steps to take, what classes to take. I mean, every agent approaches their job somewhat the same and somewhat differently. It kind of depends on the size of the office. Some agencies are very, very big, so the level of interface with the actor could be minimal. And then some agencies are very, very small, and the agent functions very closely with the actual talent and can advise on many, many different levels.
Okay, so let's go back a bit. And how do you find these actors?
Many different.
And who's worth representing?
Oh, well,
those are good questions.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we find actors in many different ways. I come from the legit theater world, so I go and see a lot of plays. I fortunately have a lot of actors who are working, so I'll see them in their shows and then potentially see other actors that might entice me. We also receive submissions by mail. We also listen to recommendations from casting directors or even our clients that we represent.
Now, if you get a submission by mail, what would cause you to call that person in? What kind of stuff are you looking for?
Well, it depends on what area they're looking for. I mean, we have a commercial department, so many times if they're looking for commercial representation, then it's type, whether they're a type that we need in our roster for the commercials, and then if they've had a little bit of experience, maybe taken classes, and we'll invite them in for an interview and have them read some copy. That's for the commercial actor. But for legit, it's a little bit more selective because it's so highly competitive. So I guess I would first look at the photo and see if it's professional. And then I would have to see the resume and if there are any credits, experience, training. We're very, very selective. We have about 60 signed clients, which is a very, very small agency. Mm-hmm. So the credentials have to be pretty high. for us to even take an interest.
Okay. And let's say a person is newer. What kind of things could they do to get this experience for you to notice them?
Well, they should get work. I mean, that's what they need to do. They need to go out there and either get acting work in showcases or plays or out-of-town regional theater, or they can do some student films or non-union films. It depends if they're union or non-union. They really have to get work to build a resume, because no one's going to hire them unless there's some proof of their experience.
Now, what if a person lives in an area where this sort of stuff doesn't happen that often, like a small town? What could they do?
They could create their own work or move.
Okay. How could they create their own work? What would you think are some good tips for that? Creating their own work.
I mean, if they live in the middle of nowhere and maybe there's some other people who are in the same boat as them, then they could form maybe a theater company, or maybe they could create a web series or do short films.
The web series are very popular these days.
Yes, they're sort of like an easy way to create content. But as in anything that's easy, there's varying levels of standard. Mm-hmm. So with the proliferation of web series, you can have a lot of mediocre content. So
it's a work in progress.
Yeah. I mean, you have to have a good story, and you have to also have a very professional execution of the story.
Got it. Okay, so let's get back to professionals that are already working. So what percentage do you get as far as a commission?
Oh, the commission for agents? Sure. Mm-hmm. It's 10%, except in print advertising. For print, that can be 20%. For our commissions as agents, the standard is 10%, but in theater, it can differ simply because of the different scales of salary. So, For instance, in equity, if the salary falls below $535 a week, then the agent can receive 5% commission. And there are also other particular rules according to different contracts, but the standard is 10% for an agent.
Okay. And a lot of people ask me, what's the difference between an agent and a manager?
Yeah, and a lot of people will have a lot of different answers to that question. So it's
what's your good answer?
Well, my good answer is that an agent is licensed by the Consumer Affairs Board. So we are licensed to work as a human resource professional. I mean, really. Okay. And so whatever state the agency is operating in, they are licensed by that state to do business. We also, for the most part, have franchises with the unions. For instance, we are franchised by Actors Equity. So we have an Actors Equity franchise. We are not franchised. The particular agency where I work now, SW Artists, is not franchised by SAG-AFTRA because we do so much work in non-union commercials. However, that doesn't stop our actors from being seen by SAG-AFTRA contracts in those projects. It just enables our actors to also work in non-union commercials, which is there's a huge amount of business in that area.
Yes.
What was the question again?
Back to the difference between agents and managers.
Oh yeah. I knew why I was avoiding that. Managers are, they have created a place for themselves in the industry. They more and more are functioning like agents, which is really not legal. They are not licensed.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone can become a manager. They're not supposed to be submitting and doing negotiations, but they are, and the agents can't seem to stop them. But as far as the actor is concerned, they really have no recourse. If there's a problem that comes up with a manager, there's no organization that they can bring their complaint to.
Right.
Whereas with the agents, you are protected because there's a system of arbitration set within. I mean, I understand an actor wants to be submitted. They want auditions. If a manager comes up to them and says, I can submit you and get you in for these things, why would they say no?
Right.
And there's some managers that I think they're fine. They work ethically. They work with agents. They don't take the job away from the agent, but they support their talent. How do they support their talent? They think in the big picture. They'll advise according to, career goals. Perhaps a really good manager, what they do is they actually set the actor up for meetings with agents.
Right.
And then they look at the big picture, but they let the agent do their job. And I think that's a very good system. That's kind of like the system that I like to work with, because I work very closely with the actor, and I don't really want to be in competition with a manager. If you're going to have a bigger team, then it's better for all the team members to work together on behalf of the actor instead of working against each other.
Okay, good answer. I like how you cleared all that up. So let's get back to you taking on clients. What do you do to develop them as the career goes?
Well, clients they come in different stages. So some actors we take on having just graduated from the conservatories like Carnegie Mellon or Yale or NYU, and they're fresh, new, and we are opening the doors. So it's a matter of submitting them and getting them auditions, and hopefully they've learned enough from their actual training to enable them to audition well. Many times that's not the case. So they could spend a whole year trying to figure out how to audition, which is really a problem for us because we'll make no money that year while they struggle to figure out how to audition.
How will you know if they're good at auditioning or not?
Well, if they get callbacks.
When you first meet them, how do you audition them?
That's a good question. We don't. We meet them after we've seen them do some of their work, either in a showcase or in a play, or we've seen a reel, and we have no way of knowing how they're going to audition. So we'll find out very quickly. If they get callbacks, we know they're doing well. If they don't get callbacks, we know there might be a problem. And then I'll have to try to find some feedback from a casting director, and I'll search for that. And
will the casting directors often give you feedback on your clients?
Well, I don't often ask for it.
Okay.
I don't spend my time getting feedback. So on the occasion that I do, they will. But I don't spend my time getting feedback. It's a waste of my time because really I need to spend my time getting auditions.
Mm-hmm.
If after 3 months there are no callbacks, then that's a red flag, and I'll have to ask around. But, usually it all works out.
Okay, now let's talk about the different kinds of work. There's commercials, there's film and TV, there's theater, there's voiceover. What would be the different kind of talent that is best suited for this different kind of work?
Well, I mean, it depends on their skill level and also on their natural talent. Some people are really great on theater, but they might not. Their gifts might not translate so well for TV film, and vice versa. So, if you're the kind of actor that wants to do it all, you have to get trained equally in all mediums. I mean, I have a lot of musical theater people who are really great. They're on Broadway. They want to do TV and film, but they've never been in front of a camera. So I can't submit them for TV and film until they've gone and studied some technique, because I don't want to put them in front of a casting director for TV and film and have them fall flat on their face. They have to know a little bit of the technique for TV and film, because it's much different than musical theater, right?
Right.
So I think when an actor comes to us, we find out you can look at their resume and see where they've been trained and what kind of experience they've had. And then you ask them, what's your main passion? What are you most interested in doing? And then you go from there. And if everything on their resume is musical theater, but they say, my passion is TV film, then you have to make it very clear that they need to go take a class or two and get really solid in that technique before we can submit them.
Okay.
And judging on their reaction to that will be whether we're going to work with this person. Because if they're resistant and they say, I don't need to take a class, I know how to do that, then we might not be the right agent for them. I mean, we're very, very down to earth. You know, this isn't brain science. There's logic, even if the business is very illogical. There's logic within the steps to take to become a working actor. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So what if they're totally killing it in everything? They're booking left and right. At what point do they get things like PR people, and what's the next step after they've?
Well, I think
they're
it's a
building their
natural
resume?
progression.
How do people get famous, I guess, is the question.
I don't really pay attention to that. Fame, fame is recognition. I think it will come naturally. It will come on the basis of your work.
So basically, you have to book a big show where you're going to be seen. But to get that
would
booking,
help.
you've got to rise up the ranks to get noticed by those casting directors. So, is there ways for people to stand out as they're booking these gigs?
They're going to stand out if they stand out. If their work speaks for themselves. If you look at anyone who's famous or doing well, it's because they've done something that's gotten notice.
Mm-hmm.
So that's your answer.
Good answer.
A lot of people say, how important is it for me to get followers? Should I be really spending a lot of time on my Twitter and my social media accounts? And I feel, especially for beginners, for people who are starting out, it's much more important to spend the time getting experience and getting really good at what you do. And the other stuff will fall into place. I feel that if you're spending all your time on Instagram rather than taking class or being on set and working on a movie or working on a TV show or working in a play, then you're going to get a lot of followers, but you're going to be empty as far as the content of your product.
Right. So that's kind of an interesting trend, because you see that in the breakdowns quite often. They're looking for people with large followings already, mostly for commercial stuff. Mm-hmm. But also in these smaller independent films, they're looking for people with these large followings.
Mm-hmm.
But doesn't have much to do with talent, so.
Yeah, I mean, they're just looking for someone who can sell their product.
Mm-hmm.
And, I guess it depends on where you want to put your energies, what kind of an actor you want to be. If you want to be an actor who has gazillion followers, or whether you want to be an actor who is really gifted and brings a depth to their work.
Great answer. Now, tell me, why did you write this book, Ask an Agent? How did it come about?
Well, I wrote the book because I had been an actor, and there were so many questions I had, and I didn't understand why things were the way they were. I mean, this was back way before the internet. So you couldn't, Google what is an agent, or why do agents do this kind of thing. I mean, this was back in the day when you would make rounds and you would go to the various agent offices with your headshot and resume, and you would knock on the door, or you would go up to the door in the office building and you would see this big sign on the door: do not phone, do not visit, do not even knock on the door, leave your photo and resume in the basket on the floor. And, this was so stark a reality. And how do you meet these people? I would work in theaters with actors who had agents, and their agents would come to see their work. And I was like, how did they get those agents? And wow, this is like a whole other level that I'm not privy to, and I don't know how to get into that. And so there were so many questions. And then when I went on the other side and I started working in an agency in an office, and I was able to see, like, oh, so this is how it's done. And this was, way before computers, and this was before phones.
Wow.
Well, no, we had computers. You had very clunky,
we had
clunky computers that couldn't do a lot at that time.
Yeah, they didn't have a lot, and we definitely had phones with, the different lines, right? So our day, and I was the, assistant office manager, so my day was filled with juggling 3 calls, 4 calls at a time, and then when there was a knock on the door or the doorbell rang and there was an interruption because an actor was there. Hi, how are you? I just thought I'd leave my photo and resume. Then I began to understand why they put this big sign on the door: do not phone, do not visit, because every kind of interruption is costly. If you're on the phone with a general manager doing a deal, or you finally got through to a casting director for your push to get someone seen for a project, and you're interrupted, it's terrible. It's like the death of our activity. So little things like that, I began to understand how the business works, how agents work with casting directors, what they do for their actors, what an actor could do that would really be helpful to the agent. And that's when I thought, gee, I really should, bring this information to the actor populace. And I talked to the editor of Backstage at that point. That was Sherry Eaker. And I pitched her this idea of a column, Ask an Agent, kind of like Dear Abby column that actors could write in questions, and then I would answer them. And she liked the idea. And so I did that for 3 years, and it was really great. And people loved it. And it was so fabulous because there was great information coming out to the actor population. And then people said, gee, these columns are really great. Did you ever think of putting them into a book? I thought,
yeah, that's a good idea. So I wrote a book proposal to Backstage, which was the apparatus kind of connected to, it was like the publishing organization that was connected to the newspaper.
Yeah, that was the paper that all the actors read,
right,
and it would have
Backstage
audition notices in it.
That's right. And Backstage Books published books. So I wrote a book proposal, and they really liked it. But they said, "Oh, it's really great, but we want 50% new material." So I thought, "Oh, I can't just compile my old columns." But I wrote the book, and it did very well. It was highly, it was really well received. People loved it, and it had a very successful run for 10 years, and then they stopped publishing it. And I thought, oh, okay. Well, I mean, there were a series of events that happened that led to them stopping. I mean, they were Backstage Books was bought by Random House. Random House, expanded into other areas, blah, 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 blah. So then the rights reverted to me, and I thought after a couple of years went by, gee, this is still very good information. I should write a second edition. I'll take out all the language having to do with faxing. Oh. Mm-hmm. I'll take out all the language having to do with faxing because nobody faxes anymore. Nope. And also, by that time, everything had gone electronic. So this whole electronic age had exploded, and I really needed to incorporate information about that. So I wrote a second edition through Amazon.com. They have their own Create Space publishing platform. It's fabulous. I self-published. And the book's been out, and it's still really doing well, and people find it very, very valuable. I mean, I think, I'm a very straightforward person, and I feel that the more real information that gets out, that will keep people working on a very, very smart level, the better for them, the better for the whole industry. Actors should know how agents work and what we do and what our day is made up of and how we deal with casting directors. They should know all of that so they can know how they could help to make the job easier and how we can all work together. And I think this book really covers all the bases.
How many chapters are there?
Well,
8?
Let's see.
I'm reading 8.
I'm looking at this right now.
I'm looking on Amazon right now at the content.
There are 12 chapters.
12 chapters. It's only showing me 8. Okay.
12 chapters. Like what is an agent? How do actors get agents? How do agents choose actors? How do actors choose representation? How do agents submit actors? How do agents sell actors? How do agents prepare actors for auditions? How do agents take offers and negotiate contracts? How do agents advise actors? How do actors and agents communicate? Very important. Money matters, also very important. Hello and goodbye.
Now, chapter 4 is interesting. How do actors choose representation? Let's say you've got a couple agents that want to represent you. How would you choose between them?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. First of all, people should know that they can have several agents. They could have one agency representing them commercially and another agent representing them for legit, which means theater, TV, and film. They could do that, or they could have one agency that represents them, what we call across the board, for commercials and legit. They could also have one agency based in New York and one agency based in LA, different agencies, or they could have an agency that covers them in both coasts.
So there's a variety of paradigms.
Or they could have a manager and several agents.
Yeah, they could. I mean, they could have a manager and they could have several agents, like an agent for commercials, an agent for legit, that too. And then they could have like a lawyer who deals with contracts. That's for the big picture.
Right.
I always think it's best to go with your gut. So whatever agent you feel is extremely the most enthusiastic about you, and you feel really gets you, understands you, is on the same page as what you want to do and where you feel you fit in. I mean, it's very important that your agent and you see eye to eye on the various aspects of what it will take to represent you. So, and that all comes out in the interview process.
Mm-hmm.
That's important. And also you have to do your due diligence. I mean, you have to research the agents that, someone could be like really enthusiastic, but very new and not have very many contacts, as opposed to someone who's been around and might not be so enthusiastic, but still very, very interested and more level-headed.
Mm-hmm. Now, you said the communication between the actor and the agent is really important. What are some details about that?
Well, I think once again, it kind of depends where the actor is in their journey. If they're just starting out and they've just graduated, say, from one of the colleges or conservatories or universities, they're really beginning and they need a lot of guidance. So you'd want to be with an agent who is happy to provide that guidance if that's important to you.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's many different ways of communication these days, and that's also something to find out when you're having your interview process. Is the communication through the phone? Is it through email? Is it through text? How often should you expect to hear from your agent? I mean, what we would usually say is you'll hear from us when you get an audition. That's when you'll hear from us. And then the actor might say, am I allowed to send requests of submissions? And we say, yes, but please don't send a request every hour on the hour. You need to have faith and have a belief that we know what we're doing and will submit you accordingly to the projects that you're right for.
Now, what can along this process, what can the actor do to help you help them?
They can get out and meet the casting directors.
Okay.
That's really important. Everything is done electronically these days. We make submissions through the various web platforms. So it's their picture on a computer screen. And that's how the submission gets to the casting director. And so you can just imagine seeing a casting director in front of a computer screen with 50 thumbnail size photos on a screen. How are they going to choose who to see? Well, if they've just met so-and-so the night before at one of the places in town where they offer these pay-to-play opportunities, I hate to say it, but that works because there's a familiarity. And they'll go, oh, I met that person. Oh, yeah, and they're right for that. I'll bring them in. So we find that very beneficial. We hate to say that, the actor should pay for these, but it's an investment in your career. It seems to be the way of the world these days. So we help our actors target the people that we feel are beneficial for them to meet And that seems to be one way. The other way is to get out and about and network and become involved in projects. I mean, really, this is a business that's based on relationships. So the more you're out there, either auditioning, networking, working, meeting people, one thing leads to another, and you never know where a catering job, and you hear of a tip of something that leads to an actual job down the road. It's better. You have to be out and about and working the angles all the time.
What if you're out and you're meeting people? What should they have headshots on them often?
Well, I think that, it used to be, you should carry your headshot, but let's say,
A lot of people
you're not.
have business cards where their pictures on it. I think those are good.
I think those are really good, and I think it's really good to have a website so that, if you put the website on your business card, then people can do some research about you. Just having a business card with a photo and your contact information, like your cell phone or your email, that's great. But let's say the person wants to see a demo reel or see, production stills or
I think reels are very important because just seeing a picture is one thing, but if you don't know how they sound, it could be a totally different
Right. So
thing.
we tell everyone to build a website or have an Instagram page, some kind of internet presence.
Okay, great. I think that'll do it. Do you have anything else you want to cover while we're here?
It's a great business. I love it. And I hope everyone follows their passion and meets their potential.
Okay, great. And again, this is Margaret Emory, and you can buy her book on Amazon, Ask an Agent, and get all kinds of amazing answers to your acting career questions.
Thank you so much. I really had a good time.
Thanks, Margaret. Well, that's all, folks. Surviving Show Business is sponsored by nycastings.com, the place where stars are born. Actors, models, dancers, and singers can join and get casting notices sent to your phone every day.